So, hi everyone, and welcome to the Borders Property Market Update. I hope you're all well today. Thank you so much for signing up and coming along. We really appreciate it. So today we have set aside 30 minutes to talk you through all the updates that we have, and we also have a Q&A section as well. So thank you to everyone who pre-submitted some questions. If you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please just drop it in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer them. And if we can't do it today, we will be back in touch with you at some point. So feel free to let us know. So my name's Ashley, I work at ESBC, and I am joined today by our panel of experts. So we'll just go around and I'll do some introductions before we kick off. So first of all, we have Ron Hastings, who is our solicitor today from Hastings down in the Borders. So hi, Ron.
Hi.
Hi. We also have David Lauder, who is our independent mortgage advisor, and he's also based at ESBC. So hi, David.
Hiya.
And we're also joined by Claire Flynn, who is our PR and content exec, and she also works at ESBC. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Claire, who's going to talk you through the market update. So thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Ash. So as Ash mentioned, I'm just going to provide talk through a few of the key market statistics that we've got for the Borders over the past few months, just to paint a wee picture of what's been happening in the market there, and then we'll move on to the pre-submitted questions. So if we're looking at the period from December to February, so just the past 3 months, the average property selling price in the Scottish Borders was just under £250,000. So that's up almost 14% compared to the previous year. So quite a big jump there in average selling price. And during this time in the Borders, the median selling time, so that's the median days it takes for a property to be placed under offer, was 26 days compared to 45 days last year. So again, a big decrease in selling time. So we're seeing that increase in average selling price, but a decrease in selling time, indicating strong buyer demand and a competitive market. And this is further indicated by the average home report valuation achieved. So on average, the average home report valuation being achieved over the past 3 months in the Borders was 101%, and this is compared to 96.8% last year. So again, quite a reasonable increase, indicating that more people are bidding at or over the valuation in order to secure a property in the Borders. And again, that tends to be a sign of a competitive marketplace of strong buyer demand. We can actually see that 70% of properties in the Borders over the last 3 months were sold for at least the home report valuation, and that's compared to just 44.8% last year, so a big jump. In terms of individual towns, Kelso achieved the greatest volume of property sales during this time, but it was Galashiels that saw the biggest number of homes coming to market over the past few months. So what do these stats tell us? I've kind of already said it, but these paint a picture of a relatively competitive market with strong buyer demand. People are looking to secure properties, so they are selling well and selling quickly. As with many other areas in Scotland, we have seen fewer homes coming to market in the first couple of months of 2021 compared to last year. But as lockdown restrictions continue to ease, we could start to see more homes coming to market, which might help to satisfy some of the strong buyer demand in the Borders. So yeah, I hope that paints a little bit of a picture, sets the scene for you guys before we start onto the pre-submitted questions. Thanks to everyone who did submit a question in advance. As Ash said, if you do have another question that pops into your head while the event is going on, please feel free to pop it into the chat box or Q&A box, and I'll do my best to get to those at the end if we do have time. So the first question is for Ron, and it's, where are buyers for Borders properties coming from after last year's lockdown?
Sure. Well, that's a question we get asked quite a lot down here. And as ever, there is not just a single answer to that. There's a significant number of post-lockdown buyers coming out of the cities into the country. So that's the general picture. So Central Belt, Glasgow, particularly Edinburgh because of the proximity to the Borders, and obviously you pick up some who are escaping to the country, as they say, and others who still want to keep a connection with Edinburgh. So there are large parts of the Borders which are Edinburgh commutable, a phrase that was made up some years ago, which seems now to be in the Oxford English Dictionary. But anyway, there we are. beyond that, we also have, for past 20 years now, I would say, we've had a steady stream of buyers from England finding the Borders. And I would say that that started off with the more accessible property market because of the expansion of property marketing on quality websites like ESPC. Others are available. But the internet basically has opened up the market to people who are from afar. And it's also opened up the eyes of people who are able to see the Borders as more than just a road to get to Edinburgh and the north. So, people now stop off in the Borders. Obviously, we've got more connectivity with the train coming down from Edinburgh down the Waverley line. And but beyond that, I would say also we've noticed a significant number of buyers who have in the past maybe gone for their dream Highland home and then discovered when the grandchildren come along that it's a long way to visit. So they maybe only see, even in pre-lockdown times, the grandchildren once in a blue moon. So we've found folk looking to relocate from further far-flung places to the Borders because it is still Scotland. It still looks like Scotland. In many ways, it resembles Perthshire. It's got lots of countryside, lots of green space, and it is more accessible because you've cut your journey time in half. On the East Coast, you can get down to London on the mainline train in 5 or 6 hours, and the West Coast from Carlisle, you've got that connection as well. So that's probably covers. We also have people coming from abroad quite regularly. There's been I wouldn't say a flood of people being repatriated post-Brexit, but certainly there's been people who have been rediscovering their wish to come back to Scotland or their need to come back to Scotland to work and live.
Great. Oh, thanks, Ron. That's really good. And it sounds like there's a real mix of people sort of looking at the Borders and realising how attractive the lifestyle is there. So that's great information. Thanks for that. The next question is for David. So it's, as a buyer who needs a mortgage, what would you advise I do to help maximise the chance of my offer on a property being accepted? And what is the hardest thing about being a buyer in the current climate?
I think the first thing from a mortgage point of view is you need to confirm your eligibility. So that's like engaging with a mortgage advisor and getting an understanding of what your personal and financial circumstances are, and what they'll be able to do is analyse what you're trying to do and then confirm your eligibility with what's called an agreement in principle. So an agreement in principle is like a big overdraft facility from a bank that, subject to you evidencing everything you've told them, will say you can borrow X amount of money. Once you've got that, also the advisor can give you an idea of what your budget's going to look like, monthly payments, types of mortgages, and just basically make sure you're going into this with your eyes wide open in terms of when you buy. Obviously, another important thing other than the agreement in principle is making sure you've nominated a solicitor as well. So once you've got that in place and an agreement in principle, in essence, you've got all your ducks in a row, and it means if the right property becomes available, you're ready to strike quickly, which can be very important when the market is so competitive. In terms of eligibility for a mortgage, just doing all the right financial habits, making sure you exist at your addresses, so being on the voters roll, actually having a credit card, using it, paying it off to show you can manage credit, that's really important, and obviously just trying to be as disciplined as possible with your finances. In terms of the hardest part of buying a house, so I mean, if you've got all your ducks in a row, then you're well positioned, but probably most of Scotland at the moment, there is a lack of stock. And the lack of stock basically means that then a lot of buyers congregate on the same properties, which can then mean to bidding wars and people having to bid over the valuation. So one of the challenges, particularly for first-time buyers, is the deposit, because although you may have the deposit for the mortgage, what you actually sometimes require is the money to bid over the valuation as well, which is not factored into the mortgage. So it's important to try and make your circumstances as strong as possible. and give yourself the best chance to what you can afford. But sometimes luck plays a part, and it's just sometimes being in the right place at the right time. But you've got more chance if you have your agreement in principle and you have your solicitor in place.
Great, thanks, David. That's really useful info. And yeah, as you mentioned, the agreement in principle is particularly important, and also really important, as you said there, to bear in mind the mortgage lending up to the valuation or the home, the valuation or the purchase price, whichever is lower. So people to be aware that they need to budget for that as well. And I know that's something that a lot of people don't always realise they have to do. So really important to be aware of.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, David. And I like your advice about speaking to a solicitor. The old saying used to be, it's never too early. I'm showing my age now. It's never too early to call your solicitor. And that is very true when it comes to buying a house as well as other matters. And it's also never too early to call your financial advisor. So scratch your back on that one. And because you get this decision in principle, sometimes you get it far too easy if you just go to your bank or a one source lender. And in reality, they haven't really done any checks on you at all. In fact, they really, particularly in COVID times, don't really want to see you. And they'll basically say, go and find a house. Once you've found a house, come back in to see us. Well, to my mind, that is getting the cart before the horse. And as a selling agent, we will also always want to know how the buyer is going to pay for it. What's the source of funds? We need to know that, and to pre-qualify people who are putting an offer in. So a verbal offer is frequently put forward, oh, I've got a decision in principle. Now, you have to dig a little bit deeper than that. Who with? So going to financial advisor, they will scratch the surface. They'll look at a bit more than scratch the surface. They'll make sure that you've got all your paperwork and anticipate any problems that might otherwise come to bite you when you finally get to see that bank advisor in 3 or 4 weeks' time, and the deal you thought you had falls or goes away like snow off a dike, as they say.
Great, thanks, John. And yeah, I think that for both of you, that illustrates the point of a key point, and something to always advise buyers or sellers about is really consulting with the experts as soon as possible. So speaking to a solicitor, speaking to your independent mortgage advisor, really important. So our next question is for Ron, and it's, what areas of the Borders are seeing the largest price increases, and are there any particular areas which are popular for buy-to-lets?
Oh, this is a Borders trap. You know, there's a lot of rivalry in the various towns in the Borders, and if I say the wrong thing, I'm sure I'll get a few people attacking me on social media. But anyway, trying to be objective, since I am a non-borderer, although I've been here for 20 odd years, in fact more than that, 35 years, time flies. Yes, what are the, sorry, what was the question? Yes, I remember, don't worry. The popular areas in the Borders, well, depends where you're coming from. If you've got a tradition in the Borders and you've got family in the Borders, there is a strong pull to stay close to your family, so you can have those grandparents babysitting for you, and you've got your friends and associates that you not too far away from. If you are looking from afar at the Borders, then obviously the tourist spots stick out. So you tend to get Melrose, which is obviously highlighted. I mean, most years, not this year or last year, with the Melrose Sevens, and you know it's a well-kept part of the Borders, iconic. But I would say to you, it is very much a tourist town. That's upset a few Melrosians, but there you go. Kelso is also a key beauty spot in the Borders. But if you're talking about house buying, and again, you're looking at affordability and you're looking at a lifestyle, and you really should look wider than the label that attaches to a town, because a lot of towns in the Borders offer fantastic lifestyle. Their high streets might not look fantastic, but the hills that surround them and the lifestyle you can get from running in those hills or walking in the hills or going at the dog, and you know, basically it's there on your doorstep, instead of having to drive 3 hours up to the Glens or whatever. So it's horses for courses. and there are a lot of horses in the Borders as well. So equestrian buyers they've got plenty of choice. Just about every town has some sort of horsey tradition. And of course, you mustn't forget the Borders is always known as the rolling hills and the hills of the Borders and the Lammermuirs and the Cheviots, but it actually has a fantastic coastline along the Berwickshire coast. It's got the St Abbs Nature Reserve, and there's a lot of beauty spots along Berwickshire that quite often get forgotten about.
Yeah, and I guess those towns as well, so bearing in mind those towns for potential buy-to-let opportunities as well for some people, if they were interested in, would they be also considered as buy-to-let opportunities?
Buy-to-let opportunities, that's what the question was about.
Yeah.
Yes, buy-to-let opportunity. Yes, I think so. And bear in mind also that if you do, I mean, obviously with buying buy-to-let, David will no doubt correct us, but buy-to-let, if you're getting a buy-to-let mortgage, then you really have to let the property. It's not for your own personal use, and it is not for holiday lets as such. That's a different sort of commercial lending. And the other thing I would say is when you're looking at a buy-to-let property, don't think of it as the sort of place that necessarily would suit your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it, is there a market for it? Is there a rental return on it? A rental. If you get a nice return on 2 or 3 properties, flats or some smaller houses, each giving you £600–700 a month, and you buy a 200,000 property giving you only maybe £100 a month more. I mean, really, it doesn't take a financial genius to work that out, that is not maybe the best in investment. But the other thing you do have to bear in mind, because sometimes you can get some exceptionally cheap properties, is there an exit strategy? Is someone going to buy it off you? Are you going to get capital increase in value as well? So it's not just about having the income coming in. So yeah, you can all over the Borders there are places, and the rental market is. We talked about shortages. The rental market is really strong at the moment.
That's good. Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks, Ron. And yeah, I think it kind of emphasises the point as well, obviously, with the really speaking to a local agent to get some expert advice on that to help you work out where is the right area to buy a property in or invest in a buy-to-let property there. So next question is back to David. So this one is something I think you have been asked frequently over the last year or so, but it's, can I get a mortgage with a 5% deposit right now?
So up until 2 weeks ago, to buy outright, I would have said no to that. But per the budget last week, very positive news is that with the mortgage guarantee scheme, there is about a handful of lenders that are well-to-do, reputable lenders who will consider 5%, more likely to become available in early April. But as of Tuesday, Accord Mortgages, who in essence are Yorkshire Building Society, they have already opened the doors to 5% options. How long that will remain depends on how saturated they get with applications. But this is a really positive sign. It's a return to pre-COVID conditions. What we don't know yet, because it's early days, is how strict the criteria will be, which I would imagine would be very credit score, income, debt to ratio, overall profile. So I think it'll be quite a small box. I would expect interest rates at 5% to be north of 4%. But what it will allow people to do is even people that think they've just got the 10% deposit at the moment will give them the potential option to have 5% to bid over the valuation to potentially get the house if they require to beat the competition. So very positive signs. Still early days to know how accessible and easy it will be, but it's hopefully a sign that the rest of the lenders will follow precedents, and it'll also in a way make it easier for lenders, like it'll have a ripple effect where 10% mortgages will be easier to get 15% because 5% will be the new minimum norm. So yes, very positive. First time buyers I think will really benefit from it because the deposit is the hardest thing for them to get. And to sort of reiterate what I said earlier, voters roll, keep building up your credit, being disciplined with your money, building your deposit. all helpful tips to basically make sure you're well placed.
David, I've just had a question come in from Linda. So Linda's asking, will 5% mortgages with Accord mortgages be available for movers or only for first-time buyers?
So it's still early days, so I'll do my best to answer that, but I've not done one yet, is the honest answer. I believe yes, they are, but where Accord are being quite cute is it's a 5-year fixed rate they're only offering, and it's a rate close to 4%. So they are locking you in for 5 years for the risk. And what we don't know yet is how high the credit score is to pass or the level of detail. But I do know already of cases that have been approved, and I believe it is for both home movers and first-time buyers. Yes.
Thanks, David. That's really useful. And as you said, the sort of announcement in the budget last week came as really positive news to a lot of buyers across the country. So yeah, the next question I've got here from the pre-submitted questions is for Ron, and it is, what factors do agents take into consideration when valuing a property, and how close do these figures tend to be to the home report valuation?
Sure. Well, the factors vary. A lot of them are common sense. First of all, you've got your price history. And most agents will look at the price history for that area or that street. That information is readily available on the ESPC, and will show the changes in prices on the properties over the past 10 years, I suppose. More than 10 years ago, it becomes a little bit irrelevant. But you've got your price checks, and that's a starting point. I certainly wouldn't finish it there, because basically that's what maybe these online valuations try and do. You get these ridiculous valuations from the likes of Zoopla. So a Zoopla valuation can only basically tell you what the algorithm says in terms of price variations in the area. And particularly in the borders, there are very, very few streets of houses that are one pretty similar to the next. They vary considerably in house style and size. You get more consistency, obviously, it's a housing development, where that's easily compared. So you're looking at the price history, you're looking at the accommodation that is available. You're looking at the market. Is there a market for a 6-bedroom house? Is there a market for a 10-bedroom house? Sometimes people get carried away by the number of bedrooms. They think, oh, that'll add value, but quite a lot of the buyers, there's just 2 of them. The kids have flown the nest, as it were, and the other bedrooms become hobby rooms, or dare I say, dumping rooms. There's the accommodation that's available. Garden has become very important, and it's not usually, apart from flats, most places have gardens in the borders of some sort of outside space, particularly post-COVID. That's really showing up. The biggest seller post-COVID was the classic country cottages, which were, in our experience, going for 20 to 25% over home report value, with, I can think of one, 17 offers at a closing date. Crazy stuff, almost, dare I say, like some Edinburgh results, which you wouldn't normally see. We don't normally see boom and bust in the borders, such price variations, but certainly there's been an element of enthusiastic buyers coming in. So that was exceptional, I think, and I think very short-lived. Things soon settled down. Motivation, the seller's motivation, are they bothered? Have they done what they should do, is actually prepare their house for the market? It helps if you can see yourself as others see you, so make sure it's quite good actually to get someone to actually give an objective look at the house. What do you think? So one of the things we do when we go around with valuation, I often get asked, is there anything we can do? And then the point of trying not to be rude, there usually is plenty of things we can suggest. But it's all within time scale. How quickly do you want to sell? Have you got a place that you're desperate to get, or do you want a very quick marketing campaign? So these are the sort of things that you would take into account: presentation, curb appeal, price history, very important to know when you're valuing a house, what they paid for it, because it gives you a fair indication of a starting point, but what they've done to it, so that, you know, dare I say, the surveyor might be busy that day, and maybe he doesn't take great note of improvements have been made and simply goes on the historic valuation and how things have increased. So he needs to know if you've added an extension, that's obvious, but if the place was a wreck when you bought it and you brought it back to life again and basically made it look a desirable house, that's going to have a significant effect on the marketability of it. So that's that.
Ron, I think I think it was an Anne who had asked that question, and she's just replied asking, how do you get a valuation of the only other houses in the area are 2 beds and were sold many years ago and needing upgraded? And I think you've just answered that really nicely, because you've just spoke about obviously historic valuations and obviously the presentation. But Anne, maybe get in touch directly with Ron. Ron, if you're happy to speak to Anne on the side about how you'd value her house or help her. Yeah. That's something.
Well, my wife might be listening, so I'm not sure about talking to Anne on the side, but I'm very delighted to speak to anyone about housing matters.
And get in touch afterwards, and we can definitely get Ron to get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Can I just? There's one more question that came in, Claire. I don't know how we're doing for time. Is it okay to?
I've still got one more of the pre-submitted questions, so will we do that one quickly, and then we can see if we have time for the other one. So no worries. The final of the pre-submitted questions is: I'm looking to purchase a plot to build on in the next 5 years. What are the planning constraints and ways of ensuring a successful application? Ron, could you offer some insights on that question?
Yeah, I can. I'm pleased to say it'll be a very brief insight, because there's not a lot I can say about that. Basically, planning constraints and buying a plot is probably one of the trickier purchases, because although it appeals to people who want to build their dream home, there are all sorts of things that you take for granted when you buy a pre-built home that you really need to think about. Is this going to add cost? Am I going to be allowed to do it? So one of the obvious things is services. Are the services readily available? Or do you have to bring in your electricity from half a mile away, and Scottish Power will charge you through the nose for so doing? Also, if you have a concept of a house in mind, are you going to be allowed to build that by your local planning official, who might have a certain idea of the style of house that is acceptable in his planning area? In the Borders, there's for some time been a big thing about preferring 1.5 stories houses rather than 2-story houses, and I'm not quite sure what the thinking behind that is, but that's certainly a change. But the big thing I would say is planning officials in the planning office are a bit like your rugby referees. They basically rule the roost, and I know you can go to appeal and have an argument with them, but very expensive process. So don't fall out with your planning officer. Try to say nice things to him or her and get them on side. If you lock horns, there's only going to be one winner. So that's what I would advise. And to be honest, the people that know planning, the local planning office best, and what you will be able to do with your dream plot are the planning advisors. So seek out a reputable planning advisor, speak to someone who's bought a plot before and find out what they learned from their experience, find out from their mistakes and how they would do it if they had the time again. So there we are. We used to have a thing called outline planning consent. I think we still do, but they just call it something different now. It's a bit like your decision in principle, though. The crux of the matter, the devil is in the detail. So there we are. And a big thing to watch out for with your budget is if you are in one of these areas that has a developer contribution, if you're near a school, a new school, or other issues that they want to fund from the housing market, then that could add on significant costs to you. And that will normally be specified in the or was in the outline planning consent, but you're as well to find that out, because it could be a horrible shock if you find that you've got to pay extra money for it, which you weren't budgeting for.
Great, thanks, Ron. That's really useful. And I know you were mentioning to me yesterday, you were saying that the plots are actually become more popular recently. So I'm sure that's really useful insight to a lot of people attending the event today as well. So thanks very much for that. Ash, did you say there was a final question? Or oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, guys. Yes, it is. And also, Peter just said, excellent, Ron. Thank you so much for that update there. So the last question we've got here is, apart from cost savings using online agents, are local agents in the Borders holding their own against them? So Ron, this is probably directed at you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Enjoy this one. Holding their own and more. There is so much more that you will get from a face-to-face meeting, whether it be a financial advisor, planning officer, a solicitor, or an estate agent, solicitor estate agent in particular. Obviously, the online agents vary. There are different formats of that, cheap and not so cheerful, almost a do-it-yourself, but minimal cost. And yes, I think the answer is, are we holding our own and more? I can think of, I'm not sure if I think of any, but I think certainly very few that have left us to go to an online agent. I can think of plenty that have come from an online agent. In fact, I can think of one in particular, if I could just say, it was on with 2 online agents for 2 to 3 years, and they had reduced the price by £100,000 from this property, and we took it on and actually put up the price, and it sold for over that in a matter of weeks. And we're talking 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Because once the online agent has frequently, when they've got their money, that might be, unless you chase them, they're on to chasing their next £900 or £1,000 or whatever. We have to, as on a commission base, we have to earn it. We only earn it if we sell, basically. So, and what I would say, particularly harking back to your 101% figure for the Borders over the home report value, what you can achieve by negotiation, never mind press a button, this is what I offer, and this is accepted. What you can achieve from that first approach quite often is properly negotiated up to cover your costs and more. So you actually are, it just makes financial sense to invest in doing things properly, and you honestly do get more for your money. Just makes sense. There's more people involved, there's more to give, they've got more time, the resources are there. You know, if it wasn't worthwhile, then you wouldn't see all these people in jobs, and they are, because they are worthwhile and they're definitely holding their own.
Great, thank you, Ron. I've just spotted there's been one more question added, and I think, David, it's probably it's one for you. It's just basically about the First Home Fund. Someone's just asking if we've covered that. I don't know if you can just provide a really quick insight into the First Home Fund, just a couple of key points on that, and then we can finish up.
So First Home Fund starts on the 1st of April. You need to have an offer accepted to be able to apply. £550 to apply. Make sure you've got an agreement in principle with a mortgage advisor that builds this in. Huge demand. Don't expect an answer for at least a month. And the reason I'm telling you that is, if you've got an offer accepted, you'll have to factor in that you probably won't be able to move into the house until at least the middle of June, because of the fact that it'll be a month or so before you get feedback. And best of luck to you, because it might be like trying to win the lottery.
Thanks, David. But at least, as we touched on earlier, there is also the mortgage guarantee scheme coming in as well, which hopefully that can also help some first-time buyers out in the next little while. So great. I think that brings us to the end of both the of the questions. So thanks everyone for attending the event and being so engaged and asking so many great questions. I just want to thank our expert panelists, David and Ron, for doing such a great job with offering their insights and expertise. It was really useful, so thank you guys. And thank you to Ash for hosting as well and keeping us all right. So great, thanks again for attending, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.
Everyone, bye.
Bye.